good morning, and welcome to another edition of Tech Niche Tips. I'm your host, Joseph M. Smith, and we are back for another one. I'm so glad to have you join us for this episode. If you are new here, go ahead and go to youtube.com/, Tech Niche Tips. That's youtube.com/, Tech Niche Tips. But that is not the only place where you can find us. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever you listen to your podcast episodes. And so I'm so glad that we're going to have this conversation with Mark. Mark, how are you doing? Mark, how's everything going?
I'm doing well. Thanks, Joseph, for having me. Look forward to
Yes.
obviously sharing some insights and answering any questions that people might have. So thanks again.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think we're going to have a really good conversation. We actually met last year in DC during Thanksgiving. And you were talking with Ty, and I believe that you were actually talking at that event as well. Was that correct?
That is correct. Yep. I did a session on customer success.
Awesome. And so that's what we're going to talk about today, because there's so many roles that are within the tech industry, especially those that are in the post side. And we want to make sure that people get an opportunity to see it all. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. But if you have any questions, go ahead and put in the chat and we'll definitely put you up. We have also OTTO in the building. Peace and blessings, brother. Always supporting the show. So we definitely appreciate it. If you are watching right now, go ahead and share this with others, as we want to get this conversation started. And so let's actually talk about a little bit your journey, where you kind of started from, in case somebody doesn't know who you are, Mark. How did you let's start from what you're doing right now, and then we'll unpack your story as we go.
Absolutely. So right now I'm currently a CSM, a customer success manager for ServiceNow. To kind of give you a little bit of my background. So coming out of college, wasn't too sure what I wanted to do. I graduated almost about 10 years ago. So I had a professor, came to me, he said that a tech company, they were hiring for sales professionals. I actually had a few offers in sales, but in a different industry. So I went through the interview process. They liked me, they hired me. So I stayed in tech sales for about a year. And then pretty much I transitioned into a post-sales customer success manager type of role. And I've been doing that for the last 7 or 8 years. So again, I like to tell people, kind of understand your strengths, your weaknesses, what you're looking to do, whether you're early started out in your career, whether you might be a mid-level professional or a senior professional, just kind of understanding what are your strengths and aligning those into the roles that you might be interested in. So that's kind of how I got started. And again, I love the post-sales aspect, building relationships, working with C-level and obviously non-technical and technical folks. And again, at the end of the day, my job is to make sure that they're getting value from their purchase solutions.
Love it, love it. And I think that there's going to be a lot we could unpack with that for sure, because some people may not really know what that encompasses. But let's take it back a little bit, because we had a conversation previously, and you mentioned that you actually started more or less as an SDR. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is correct. Yep.
All right. So let's talk about your journey from being an SDR. How did you make that pivot? How did you make that change? And what was it like being an SDR first?
Right. So that's a good question. So in my perspective, I always was pretty good at, selling myself and being curious, and that doesn't necessarily have to be business related. So I kind of realized that, I'm good at building relationships. I'm good at putting presentations together. I'm good at marketing myself. These are some skills. And I always like to tell people, sales and customer success, you always need sellers. You always need people that are post sales after the salespeople sold the product to market their product. So again, I like to tell people that understanding your strengths and weaknesses, when I started the SDR role, I realized that there obviously was a lot of pressure. I didn't necessarily want to do that for the long term. So I decided to look at other opportunities. So that's when I jumped into a post-sales role as a customer success manager. And I like to tell people that I've also seen people that started out in the tech sales roles that transitioned into a post-sales role. And I've also seen folks that are currently in post-sales roles looking to go into a tech sales role, because a lot of these skills are very, very transferable. So.
Yeah, and the skills are transferable. And one of the things, we got Mitch in the building. What up, Mitch? Good to see you here. And like OTTO says, don't forget to smash that like button when you come in. Comment, share, and subscribe. The Q&A portion of the show will be on YouTube. Yeah, so if you are watching, and what up, Instagram? I have a few people from Instagram that are watching as well. Don't forget to come back for the Q&A portion I'm gonna have questions for Mark about his journey and also what insights he could give to you as you are listening in. So definitely stay there for that. I had to, take a double take at some of these companies you got a chance to work for. 'Cause a lot of people may say, "Oh man, if I were able to work for one of these companies, I would probably be very happy." What made you decide to work or target these specific companies, and how did you make those transitions within those companies to get those roles?
Yeah. So that's a good question. I always like to be honest and transparent. If you're looking at my my LinkedIn profile or just kind of my profile, the actuality coming out of school and working at a lot of the big tech companies is very slim. I've known people that have done it. Obviously, I've had the honor and privilege to work with these great companies, but I want people to understand that that is not common coming out of college, moving into big tech companies. I always like to tell people, especially if you want to get into tech, it is okay to start at the smaller mid-sized companies because they still have a lot of the same perks. And also, I don't think a lot of people understand that a lot of the big tech companies, there's a lot of politics, layoffs and different things like that. And I also do coach, people that are looking to break into tech, that I always like to tell them that yes, the brand name is great to have on your resume. Yes, it can open a lot of doors. But if you're just looking to just break into tech, you just want to focus on your skill sets and just get into a role, get some experience at the lower level, the smaller tech companies, and then transition into like a Microsoft or Oracle or SAP. Again, I'm not saying that you can't do that because there's people that have done that. But again, if you're just looking to break into tech, kind of find ways to do that. That's a little bit easier than just because, again, if you're applying to Microsoft, you're competing with thousands of applicants, so again, I don't like to discourage people. I always say shoot for the stars, but you also have to be realistic with a lot of these big tech companies.
Yeah, I agree. I think that there's always gems of companies that people don't even know about that are
Yeah.
behind the scenes that are doing amazing stuff that might IPO sooner than you think. And so you want to get they want you, right? You want to get to places that really want you and that you could succeed there. I want to kind of go back to this because I think this is for some people that may be in the SDR role or have been in a similar role where they're trying to get to that place that's a little bit elusive, right? When we think about SDR specifically, the pathway is normally, okay, account executive or sales manager, but you made that transition to be a CSM. I want to dive a little bit deeper in that. I want to talk about specifically, did it take mentorship? Did it take relationships to get there? How did you make that transition from being an SDR to be a CSM?
Yeah, good question. So again, I always like to say the job description is your best friend. And I said, whatever job that you're currently in, hiring managers, they hire you for two things: your skills and expertise. So look at what you're currently doing, obviously build out a portfolio and be able to speak to the job description and how you can bring value to that current company or the role that you might be applying to. Because again, companies, they always need sellers to sell their products and services. Once the seller sells the product or service, you always need post sales people that can build those relationships, build their portfolio and obviously grow the business and account at the end of the day. So again, just looking at what you're currently at, looking at the job description and kind of match your expertise and how you'll bring value to that company.
Yeah, no, I totally hear that. Now, let me ask you about navigating these spaces because listen, when I first heard about customer success, I thought it was amazing. And but the more I get into it, the more I feel like it's a little bit of a daunting task because you have the responsibility of making sure that the customers that let's say those pre-sales were able to get them. You have the privilege and the responsibility again to make sure you retain them. It's a different pressure. Can you talk about that pressure that you experience being a CSM?
Yep, absolutely. And to kind of piggyback on some of the tech sales role, pressure is good. But I think I always like to tell people that understanding the type of pressure that you can kind of withstand and withhold. From a sales perspective, it's obviously hitting your numbers, right? Selling it to these accounts, growing the business. From a post sales type of role, you want to make sure these customers are renewing year over year and you're growing the account and growing the business relationship. So for me personally, obviously sales was a good foundation to transition over to a post sales role. But again, my bread and butter is building these relationships, and again, we still work with the sales teams, but it's a different aspect. So again, like I always like to tell people, that is a good segue. Even if you don't want to do CSM or a sales type of role, look at the other roles and responsibilities out there that from the skill sets that you currently have that you can propel and transition to other different type of roles in the business.
Yeah, and I wanted to point out something that Mitch said in the comment section here. He said CSM, I would say they have to be more proactive than reactive, and I agree. Can you talk about that? I know we didn't go to the Q&A portion yet, but let's dive into that because I think it's a really good point. What are your thoughts on that?
Yep. So I've been in the CSM roles for about 8 or 9 years, and I've seen the transition and evolution. Obviously, customer success and support used to be a little bit reactive. Now it's proactive, so engaging with these customers, understanding their pain points, building out these customer success plans, because I always like to tell people that there's a very short window on getting value to the customer. So as soon as you onboard, you want to make sure these customers are getting value from 30 days to 60 days to 90 days out. So you got to wear a lot of hats, obviously, with building these relationships, working with the sales teams, hitting your metrics, and different things like that. It's not always easy, but again, I like to tell people that, understanding your strengths, understanding where you're at, where these customers are at, and you can't really bring value to a customer if you don't know what they're dealing with. So again, that's why you always need to be proactive. And I can give you a quick example where sometimes, the sales teams might sell these customer success contracts. We might only have about 6 months. So in that six short months, we need to make sure that the customer is getting as much value as they can, and they're still renewing. And sometimes it's not always easy. You have to be creative with how you engage with these customers, but it's definitely rewarding, especially at the end of the day when these customers are getting value from their purchase solutions and these customers are happy.
Yeah, it's not always easy, but it is rewarding. And that's a lot of things in life. It's not just like, hey, I'm going to see the fruits of my labor this second. But if I stick with it, if I'm consistent in doing the positive activities and doing the right things, then I'm going to start seeing the fruits of my labor. And we got Tech Back Trey in the building. What up, brother in crime? We actually have a show on Monday mornings, 6 a.m. Central, 7 a.m. Eastern, called Talk That Tech, where we dive into different tech news articles and things that are happening in this space to share with others. So definitely lock in with us for Monday morning. I appreciate you stopping by, brother. Definitely appreciate it. And we also got Mitch that has another very good comment that I think is good. He said, I also think a lot of people get customer support and customer success confused. Can you talk about the differences between the two? Because there is definitely a difference.
Yep. And that is another good question. So the customer support is a little bit more reactive, but I'll be honest with you, a lot of the CSMs now, both of those roles are kind of mixed in together. Again, it just kind of depends on the company that you might be working for. But I like to tell people, you wearing a lot of hats. You're dealing with C-suite, you're dealing with tickets. In addition to that, you still have to grow the business and obviously uncover different challenges and bring those opportunities to the sales force. So it's a lot. But like I said, if you kind of understand the basics of building those relationships, kind of understanding where the gaps are at, what it's going to take this customer to get to A to Z, I think you're golden. But again, that is a good question. But again, just depending on the company that you might be working for, customer support and customer success can be viewed as two different things. But again, you always want to be proactive with these customers.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that really that's a great way to break it down. Mitch actually he added to it as well. He said once it sales gets the sale. Now it's up to CSM to keep the account going. What a sick world. I think I'm laughing at that, but it made me think about something else, which is account management and that account manager role. I don't know if you could talk about it if you have worked with a lot of account managers in the past, but it made me think about that because there comes a time where a seller may have a lot of accounts, strategic accounts underneath their belt, and they want to do a more hands-on job of managing that account, working with CSM, working with other aspects of the business in order to get their client what they need. Do you have experience with that as well? And can you talk about that?
Yep, absolutely. And just to kind of piggyback on another question as well, that's also another reason why I made the move into tech sales to CSMs, because of My book of business, obviously it's an account management role. Obviously the KPIs are a little different, but you still have accounts in the CSM role. So I can kind of give you quick examples. In my previous companies, I've had accounts all the way up to 4, as greater as 10 to 15. So again, it's that account management piece. I've had accounts in the public and private sector across many different industries and verticals. That's a big piece, account management piece, that client relationship. So a lot of those things go hand in hand. Again, I always like to tell people, just kind of look at the job descriptions and what the account manager roles. Sometimes other roles might be relationship management, client relationship management, customer success. A lot of those roles, they all do the same thing, again, just depending on what the role in the company that you might be working for. So again, a lot of the CSM roles, client relationship managers, I know they have engagement managers. They're a little bit different from the CSMs, but all of that stuff, they all kind of align to that account management, relationship management piece.
Yeah, absolutely. And y'all can't see it, but we got Recruiter Cousin on IG. She says, "Yes, Mark, let's go."
What's going on, Sinead?
Yo, thanks, fam. And if you have not locked in with her, she has a show that she did recently with Natalie Parker, a mentor of her that really broke down like how do you transition, how do you observe going from working in corporate to entrepreneurship. And so you definitely want to lock in with Sinead. She's a lot more things coming down the pipe. Please, y'all heard it from me first. Lock in with Sinead. You don't want to miss it. She's moving and grooving at the speed of light. So you definitely want to lock in with her. So glad you're watching the show, Sinead. Definitely appreciate it. And I want to definitely give her flowers for sure, that she's here. So definitely appreciate that. I want to also talk about the subject because I have some things that I had lined out that I'm like, you know what? I was going to say them for Q&A, but we're going to dive into some of these topics because it might really be helpful for people who are not aware of what's going on. When it comes to the way technology is moving, and I can speak for myself, I could get sometimes over-reliant on AI and automation and all these different tools. How has those tools been helpful for you in working in CSM? But where do you feel like there might be an issue with over-reliance when it comes to using AI automation when it comes to CSM?
Yep. That's another good question. And I can be honest and transparent. As of right now, obviously, Gen AI is not really new. We've been using that for years. I think from a customer success standpoint, as of right now, we don't really have any AI generated tools. However, what we're focusing on is how Gen AI, the AI agents, are going to help our customers in our specific industry. Obviously, because the customer relationship is never going to go away. No customer wants to talk to a robot or automation, different things like that. But we're now focusing on upscaling on how these AI agents, how Gen AI, how artificial intelligence is going to transform each industry. Obviously, Chat GDP. You can, type in the different things that can give you some questions and answers, but that does not take away from the human aspect because we still have to meet with these customers. We still have to build out these roadmaps and plans, and that's not going to go away. Same thing with sales. They still need sellers to make those relationships. I think it makes the job a lot easier, but as of right now, even for the sales tools, you still need sellers, but they also have artificial intelligence tools to make their job easier. The same with the CSMs. But from our standpoint, we're more so just upskilling right now so we can go in these meetings to understand how possibly we can build these use cases with the Gen AI. But again, it's not going to go anywhere. It's not really new, but it's just going to make our job a lot easier. But it doesn't take away that face-to-face interaction with this customer.
Yeah, I agree. It's a tool to be used, not for you to be used by it, for sure. Let's talk about poor customer health and monitoring that. And again, we talked about being proactive earlier, but sometimes to kind of peel back the onion, people don't realize that there's scorecards that come into play. There's predictive measures that companies are trying to take to basically determine if a company churns or if they decide to not continue using a service or product that you offer. Can you talk about poor customer monitoring? How do you do that? What's the essence of that?
I always like to tell people your first interaction is going to make or break everything. So from the onboarding, setting those expectations with the customer, this is what you purchase. This is kind of how I can help transform your business. And again, building out that roadmap, because you don't always get a lot of time to build these roadmaps and plans. So you need to make sure that you're hitting the ground running as early as possible. You need to make sure that you're meeting with the right people. And the thing about customer success is that everything could be going well. You can get to the end of the renewal and the C-suite says, oh, we don't have the budget for this, or you guys are too expensive. That happens. I've had that before. The engagement went well for about a year. A lot of projects and services were launched. And obviously at the end of the renewal, they just said that we can't renew. Budget constraints, obviously with COVID, years ago, a lot of that stuff happened. So you have to really be proactive and also expect that sometimes things are not going to also go your way as well. And a few other things I like to say is that when we look at customer success, right, it is all about bringing value to these customers. Again, I get joy of that. Sometimes I have customers that they don't respond to meetings. Sometimes it takes them weeks to get back to us in terms of an email, but you're still expected to make sure these customers are getting value, and it could be a small window. So you have to really be flexible. I have customers now, and even engagement that I've started, they really did not engage. It took just weeks to kind of kickstart that engagement. But at the end of the day, you still got to keep going and still be proactive.
Yeah, you absolutely do. You absolutely do. And listen, y'all, we're going to actually have a Q&A portion of the conversation that's coming up in about a few minutes. I'm going to keep it exclusively to YouTube this time. So listen, if you want to be a part of that, go ahead and do it. Actually, I'll make it YouTube and Instagram. But if you want to be a part of that Q&A, so we can bring up your questions, you have to come on to youtube.com/@TechNicheTips. The ticker is below. So if you want to do that, definitely do that. And I'll also encourage people, I see somebody in the comment section, Mohammed, who says that he wants to work at a company that, Mark, that you work at, I would just say connect with Mark. Go ahead, and if you are on YouTube, the link is there. But if you're on LinkedIn, they could connect with you as well, right? They could just go ahead to your profile and connect with you.
Yep, absolutely. Actually, like I said, I'm always here for mentorship. A lot of people reach out in terms of how to get into big tech. I'm a realist. I always like to give people, I know there's a lot of gurus and different things like that, but I try to give from my experience and obviously understand what you're looking to do. And I always say, if I can't help you, I know somebody in my network that can kind of help you. So, and again, I would not be here if it wasn't for people that poured into me and kind of mentored to me. So it's my job to make sure that I'm giving that back to the people that are reaching out.
Love it. Love it. And one thing I wanted to add to that, because I'm a big believer in community and trying to have a group that you're working with. Talk about that. And Mitch, I see your question, so I'm actually going to save that for right after this. But can you talk about those, and you can use names if you want to or not, but people that have championed you to help you to get to the next level? Can you give an example of what that looked like for you specifically?
Yeah, so I don't have too many people, personally in my family that was in tech. I do have a cousin. I shout her out. I'm not sure. She's probably not able to join. She's actually speaking at DiversiTech, Ariel Bain. So she's a chief of cybersecurity. Go follow her for the government. But she's probably been one of the biggest inspirations just from how she transitioned in tech. She started as a GS7. Now she's the chief of cybersecurity. I won't mention her company just because of privacy reasons, but she's probably been my biggest influence. Obviously, my family constantly pouring into me, my friends, also my wife as well. So again, I have a great village, and I always like to say, I don't judge my success on the companies that I work for or my accolades. My success is that did I open a door for somebody else? Did I mention somebody's name for a job opportunity? That's kind of how I measure success. And again, obviously the big company names, the accolades is all great and dandy, but at the end of the day, I'm a God-fearing man, and I always like to say, at the end of the day, when it's my time to go, I want people and I want God to know that you did a great job on earth. You built these relationships and you kind of helped as many people as possible. So.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that the reason why I like to bring that up is because sometimes people look at others and say, wow, how they became an overnight success. Or even that comment earlier about, hey, I want to get into the job that you work at. It'll be a dream to work at that company. At the end of the day, it really does take a village to get you there. And it really does take being able to listen to others, and really take advice and direction. And I know that there's so many people that can attest to that. Recruiter Cousin has a bunch of claps and prayer hand emojis on IG. I know you can't see it, y'all, but yeah, definitely want to make sure I acknowledge her presence here. And listen, y'all, we're about to switch over to that Q&A portion. Mitch has a really good question right here. But before we do that, for those people that are right now in a position, Mark, who are, let's say they're struggling, they're trying to find what their next role will be. We have to talk about it. You know, in this industry, there's more career security than job security. I'll put it like that, where you could be working for a company and then one day, for whatever various reasons, you're not there the next. I see Recruiter Cousin, so I'm definitely going to talk about that afterwards. I'm going to bring it up. But to kind of finish that question there, what advice, what sort of encouragement would you like to give to that person right now who say, hey, listen, I just got laid off, or I'm still, waiting for that next job, that next opportunity? What would you say to them?
I will tell people, and I'm very honest and transparent. I was laid off for 8 months. 8 months. And if you're looking at my resume and all the companies that I worked for, most people say there's no way you were laid off. You worked at the top companies. But I like to tell people that it's not your skill set. It is literally a numbers game out there. There's so many people that are laid off. It's easier to get a referral. That's also another way, and also reaching out to people that maybe are already working in the role that you're working at. But again, I always like to tell people that God brought me this job. I had plenty of interviews, even though I was laid off for 8 months. And I always like to say, trust your timing. The job that the company that I'm working for right now is on the same lines of the other previous companies that I worked for. I could have took other offers and other routes that were a lot smaller. It didn't work out, but it took me 8 months, and I realized that God made me wait, regardless of as many interviews that I had, because he knew that this is the company that you're supposed to be at. So I like to tell people, just keep your head up, keep applying. Don't be afraid to ask for help. And that was the biggest thing for me. I'm not a person that asks for help, but I needed help. So I wasn't afraid to DM people, say, hey, this is kind of what I'm dealing with. And I know sometimes it can be a struggle, especially for people that are self-reliant, but it is literally a numbers game. And I want people to understand that it is literally a numbers game. There's so many people applying for roles. There's probably only one or two roles. I like to tell people that I think I've had 2 interviews in the whole 8 months. I had a lot of interviews that they were hiring more than one person. And it could be a number of reasons. I asked for too much money, or it could be a culture fit. But people need to really understand that it's not your skill set. It's really not. It's just that there's so many people out of work, especially in the government now, coming over to the private sector. So there's a lot of competition, and the right job will find you, whether it's 3 months, whether it's 6 months, whether it's 8 months. Just keep applying. And I wasn't the type of person to keep track of the number of applicants. That's just not me. I'm applying for the job. If I don't hear anything back, I'm not worrying about it. You keep on going, because if you start to get so many denials, it starts to mess with your head internally. So just keep applying, keep networking. The right job will come at the right time. I know I can't really speak with a lot of challenges and things that other people have dealt with, but I know for me, it took me 8 months, and it was what it was. I thank God that I had the support and village, and I'm a mentally strong type of individual, but I just feel for everybody that's just brought new homes and different things like that. It's it sucks, but just keep on going. Just keep on going. It will happen when it's supposed to happen. And I know you hear a lot of advice that people say, oh, enjoy your vacation. Everybody doesn't have the luxury to do that. But I try to do my part and give advice to those that were in a similar boat that I was in.
Yeah, well said. I think for one way, shape, or form, either we have gone through it ourselves, or we have seen somebody that has gone through it. And so that's definitely want to share that encouragement with others. Great words that you shared, Mark. And actually, I'm going to share this before we go into Q&A. What Recruiter Cousin said here: people know nothing about eternal and behind the scenes work to make impact. Absolutely, Mark. Absolutely. So yeah, definitely I wanted to just shout that out. And we're going to go into Q&A. But the question that I have, that Mitch actually has for Mark to answer, is, as a CSM, do you ever feel like a non-renewal is your fault, or sometimes a customer just wants to try another company for whatever reason? And we're going to answer that question right after this. Again, this is the last call, YouTube. If you're not going to meet us over on the other side, that side being sorry, this is the last call for LinkedIn. LinkedIn, if you're not going to be meeting us on the other side, which is youtube.com/at tech niche tips, you're going to miss out on the Q&A. So again, that's youtube.com. You see it scrolling at the bottom /at tech niche tips. Join us there for the Q&A, and we will see you on the other side. All right. So now that we're strictly on YouTube, let's answer this question here. I got IG still rolling. We got YouTube rolling. But what are your thoughts about this question, Mark?
Good question. Good question. So, personally, I don't, because there's challenges with, the handoff from the sales team. Sometimes there's challenges with the engagement. Again, some stuff is going to be outside of our control. That's just the name of the CSM game. Again, I try to bring as much value as I can, but I also have to realize that I can't control if customers don't have budget. I also can't control if, you're working with key stakeholders and they leave for another job or a layoff happens. So a lot of things that we have to kind of deal with. Yes, it's a lot of pressure, because if a company goes to another, let's say, third party or another organization, it's kind of on us. But at the end of the day, just because I've been in this role for many different years, so I kind of understand, hey, there's going to be sometimes the things that you can do everything right. You get to the end of renewal and they automatically don't renew, or they drop down and support a service structure. So I think you got to have that balance. Again, for somebody starting out in a CSM role, you're probably more at entry level, so you won't deal with a lot of the large strategic customers, but I've pretty much seen it all in my CSM journey.
Yeah, I was gonna actually ask that question too, more along the lines about misalignment between customer success and revenue goals within the company. Could you kind of add? Could you kind of continue? I don't know if you want to add anything more about that particular part
Yep.
of the conversation.
Yep, that's another good question. So, and I always like to tell, and I've had conversations with leadership. Obviously we have different metrics and KPIs that we have to meet, and sometimes customers are busy. So they have a lot going on. Sometimes the teams are very small. We're still responsible for driving that value, but I've had to have sometimes difficult conversations with leadership and management and say, hey, the customer's happy. We're not really taking advantage of a lot of our products and services. It doesn't look like success from the company's success in terms of them utilizing our products and services. We're doing other things to keep the company happy, but it just might not be focused on, let's say, a specific area or product that KPIs fall under us. So again, that's another part of the game. Success might look a little different to leadership because, again, they're looking for renewals, upsell, cross sell. Yes, we might not be working with customers on that type of stuff right now, but the customer is still happy. So again, customer success sometimes means that it's a little different than what the leadership is looking for, but the customer is still happy. So let me know if I need to elaborate a little bit more. But again, you have to realize what success looks like to that customer. It sometimes might not be KPIs and metrics specific to the company that you might be working for.
Good point. Good point. And I want to just remind people this is a call-in show as well. So if you want to call into the show, if you want to share your personal experiences, or even if you want to just ask a question, you don't have to show your face, but you could definitely call in to express yourself on the show for sure. I got Mitch as well. Says, as a CSM, do you feel like you also are a project manager at times?
You're wearing a lot of different hats: project manager, program manager, business relationship manager. You're putting out fires with tickets. So again, a lot of those different transferable skills. If you're good at managing projects, if you're good at building relationships, if you're curious, especially coming from a sales background, the CSM roles, you kind of have to encompass all of those skills to do and be a great CSM. I don't think there's a one size fit all, but the biggest thing is that relationship building. This is a relationship building business. Even in sales, I always say it doesn't really matter what role, what company that you're working for. At the end of the day, you need to build these relationships with these customers and build that rapport.
Let me ask anybody who's in the comment section looking for work, and feel free if you don't feel comfortable saying this, but if you anybody interested in becoming a CSM, if you are interested, just put a yes in the chat. Or even if you're looking to transition, I just want to get a poll in a sense of who might be interested in this role, because it's a very interesting one, and it's a very, very important one to the business, any business, honestly. Because there's one thing when you could could get new customers, but can you keep them? And talking about keeping customers, let's talk about sometimes where some companies do not invest or have inadequate investment within their customer education journey or even enablement. Basically, they fail to provide continuous training or helping them with understanding what the product is. And then those kind of areas can lead to churn. Can you talk a little bit about that as well?
From my perspective, I've been blessed. I've been provided a lot of training, a lot of hands-on, upskilling education prior to the role, obviously in the role. And sometimes it can be, a little overwhelming because we just have so many knowledge articles with our portals, learning enablement to kind of help us do our job effectively. I always like to tell people that your onboarding experience can really make or break you. So just, obviously find roles and companies that invest in employees, because there's no way you can jump into a role and if you're not properly onboarded and supported. And once you get into the role, you also have mentors, senior, junior mentors that can kind of pour into you and help you, because it doesn't really matter how long you've been in these type of roles. You're going to be learning something new every day. So make sure that you're taking advantage of these certifications. I like to tell people, especially if you're looking to jump into sales or CSM roles or any other roles of the business, making sure that you're, on YouTube. And all the Udemy has great courses as well. Again, aligning what you want to do. And if there's gaps and skills that you need to upskill in, make sure that you're seeking out those resources. Conferences are a great way to kind of network and understand, hey, I saw this person speak on customer success or channel sales or product management. Hey, this is a person that has a lot of skill sets. This is where I want to be. This is where I want to be. How can I kind of network with them and obviously pick their brain and understand what it takes for them to be successful?
Yeah, and kind of going back to what really good, by the way, Mark. Kind of going back to what Mitch said in regard to being a project manager, that cross-functional aspect is so important, because what we find, what I at least see on my end, and please correct me, Mark, if I'm wrong, but you might have some like an executive buyer who buys into the company. They love what's going on, but their team is not all bought into it. And then you have the people that are really the ones that are using it, who are either using it inadequately and they're not really kind of doing what they should do. And then on the seller side, their team may not be a unified front and making sure that they get all the resources there. Have you dealt with that before, and how did you navigate that space?
I have, yeah. So again, the CSM roles, you got to kind of roll up your sleeves and kind of navigate and understand where are the gaps with these customers. I know I was working on a project at some previous companies. You do work with project managers, again, from a strategic level, understanding the gaps and the challenges and obviously how they can use our products and services. But you're going to be working with C-suite. You're going to be working with project managers. You don't necessarily need to know the in-depth methodologies like a project manager, but you do need to understand why the business or company is looking to utilize our products and services. So, but again, you're as a CSM, project management, program management, you're dealing with the day in. If you're looking at the C-suite, CSMs are like the chief operating officers. So the day-to-day responsibilities, making sure that we're working with a plethora of external and internal resources to make sure these customers are getting value. So you got to wear a lot of hats. There's not really a one size fit all, but the 4 key areas to be a successful CSM is program management, project management, relationship management, and obviously some reactive support, again, depending on the company that you might be working for. So a lot of different bucketed areas that you might have to kind of dive into, especially with the CSM type of roles.
Love it, y'all. Love it. Listen, like I tell you, if you're new here, what I tell the audience is this: I'm not finna keep my guests long. So if y'all don't have questions and you don't put it in the chat, I have no problem wrapping up the show earlier, because I want to be respectful of my guest time and make sure that they are getting the best use of it. So if you have questions, let us know in the chat. Like Mitch put here, Mitch says, "What do you like most about being a CSM?"
Yeah. Relationship building.
Mm.
Me personally, I think I find great joy, and that's kind of the name of the game. Building these relationships. I like traveling, going on site to customers, meeting them face to face. CSM roles, I know prior to COVID, some companies, some roles are a little bit more travel. Right now, it's probably 10 to 15%. But I just enjoy helping these customers. And I always want to tell people that understanding your skill sets, your strengths, and find roles that you enjoy. Recruiting, obviously that's a relationship building business. Your job, you have a seller hat, but you also want to bring top talent into these companies. Let's say if you're a product manager, right? You're explaining the features to customers. Customer success managers, obviously you're front and center with these customers day in and day out. So just kind of finding out what brings you joy, align those skill sets to a role, because you're going to be working for the rest of your life. So find a role that you enjoy doing. And CSMs, I've seen CSMs, I've seen nurses that transition to CSM roles. I've seen lawyers transition to CSM.
Mm.
So a lot of the skill sets you don't really realize that you have, they can be transferable into a sales and a CSM type of role. But I find great joy in building these relationships with my customers.
No, let's dive into that. I had a question, but I think we can just stop and talk about that, about those that have transitioned. And take back, Trey said 100, 100 in regards to those that what you just said. We got Tory here. Shout out to Tory Stewart. Or I really want to just shout you out. I know I mentioned earlier for those who are interested in the CSM role to say put a yes in the chat. I'm not too sure what your background is, but I want to make sure that we acknowledge you and also say that, listen, can you talk a little bit about those people who, like you mentioned, nurses, lawyers that were able to transition into the CSM role? Like, what kind of path could that look like? I want to dive back deeper into that, pull the onion back a little bit, because there are people that are looking to make those transitions and they're curious, like, what does that look like for them?
Yep, yep. So first thing is first, if you're an expert in a specific field, biotech, pharmaceuticals, healthcare and life science, it doesn't really matter what industry that you're in. You have transferable and tangible skills to be a CSM. I would say look at what you're currently doing. If and when you get an interview, write this stuff down. Say, this is what I've done in the healthcare industry. This is kind of how I contributed to this role. How does this align to a CSM role? If you don't have any examples, you can always chat GDP. But I always say, make sure that you're keeping track of your success and your wins, because you need to make sure that when you're in these interviews, you can speak to that. But yeah, I've seen people that are nurses. They're in the health and life sciences field. I know for somebody that is just starting out, I probably, this is just my honest opinion, I probably wouldn't shoot for like enterprise and large account CSM type of roles, more so the entry level. You do have the skill set, but it's just a little bit easier transition just because you don't have the CSM background. And it is very competitive. I know a lot of people think that you can transition into a CSM role. Yes, it can be done, but now hiring managers are looking for CSMs that have a little bit of technical background, not necessarily like from a DBA or a technical architect, but the foundational 100, 200 level skills like Azure, Salesforce, Google platform, because again, it's very competitive, but the landscape has changed now because of just how competitive everything is. But you don't need to be technical to be a CSM, but you do need to be able to be technical enough to talk to these senior leadership folks.
Ooh, okay. Let's dive. Let's again. We're doing butterflies now. We're kind of we make in the water of being a CSM. People want to know, talking about that technical aspect. They may say, I know it's not a guarantee, Mark. You can't guarantee anything on these shows, but when we talk about that technical aspect that people should be looking for in becoming a CSM, you mentioned Azure, you mentioned a few other things. What should they be looking for to gain knowledge about to help them get to the next level?
Yep, yep. Good question. Good question. So, foundational level skills. The AZ900 is a great entry level. Just look at the cloud platform that you're obviously looking to upskill or maybe looking to apply. Start taking the free online training and see if you can get a certification. Again, I like to tell people that you can get a CSM interview just because of your background. But pretty much all the interviews that I've been in, they've asked me about a specific technology or the implementation of the work that I've done specific to that. And if you do have these certifications, that can only help you stand out. Again, it's not a technical role, but you will work with technical folks, and it also looks a little bit better to the hiring manager, because now the hiring manager says, okay, he has the customer relationship management experience, he has the upsell consumption experience. On top of that, he's also coming in with technical credibility. So that could be Azure, AWS, any of the SaaS cloud platforms. Because again, there's a lot of applicants out here. There's no more that companies are looking for just relationship building skills. They want to also know that you're a little bit technical and you can talk and translate business and technical functions and aligning it to our products and services at the end of the day.
Wow. I'm not gonna lie, I did not even know that. I did not know that there was a technical aspect to what you guys do.
That's a big misconception. I like to tell people, like, hey, you can get interviews. That's it. But to stand out and get that land that role, having certifications incorporated in your experience, that's only going to make you stand a lot more. But I like to tell people that I don't think that you can just jump from well, I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought.
Yeah.
A like person on the phone jumping
Yeah.
to a customer success role. It's a lot different than that. Yes, you do have a customer aspect facing type of characteristics and skills, but it's a lot more to that. So I kind of like to demystify some of those misconceptions, especially people that are coming from those type of roles into a CSM type of role.
Yeah, and I got guests in the back that I'm going to bring up to ask a question. And then but before I do that, I have Mitch that says, wow, good to know. Tech by Trace is the same thing. Didn't realize that. I didn't realize that at all. I really did not. When you said that having a technical background can help you stand out. So this is why we have these conversations, y'all. And so if you know anybody else who's looking to become a CSM, who's interested in that, definitely share this conversation with them so that they don't step on the landmines. We want people to avoid it so that they can get to where they need to go safely and soundly in this tech industry. And so I'm going to bring up our guest here who decided to hop on and share his thoughts. Is it Tory? Is that how you pronounce your name?
Correct.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much for stopping by and jumping on the show. I definitely appreciate it, and I definitely want to hear from you in regards to your thoughts on this subject, or even if you have any questions for Mark.
Well, first, I would like to say that I was so busy listening. That's the reason why I didn't jump in a little earlier. You guys, you're dropping a lot of good gems, and I love it. And just to give a little background, currently I'm a HubSpot system admin,
Okay.
and that's where I primarily work. I also do Google Workspace admin as well.
Okay.
And what really has me interested in the CSM role is from working with so many CSMs. I work with them I try to work with them all the time, and I don't know if it's my issues aren't big enough or whatever, but we kind of I don't know, it seems like I'm get pushed back a lot. It's so much of a delay, or maybe it is just that it's so much volume. I don't know. I don't, I'm in the system doing this work all the time myself. So I don't I don't put it as, okay, you're not paying attention or anything of that kind of nature. It's more of are you overloaded? Should there be more CSMs?
Right.
Because after we get these services, we sign these contracts, we do all these kind of things. And then, yes, it's a lot of stuff where we need help, and it's delayed, big time delay.
Right.
And I am actually like kind of technical.
Right.
So since I'm more of a technical person, I'll jump in and do things, So I'm like, I don't know, man. It's just my thoughts. Hey, maybe I should even try to do that. Maybe I can help improve that. That's why I put the yes.
Right. Yeah.
You
So
know,
I appreciate pronounce your name one more time. I just want to make sure I pronounce it correctly.
It's Tory. You say
Tory.
it just like it's a Y, just
Tory.
regular Tory.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think two things, and again, I won't be too long winded, but two things. Obviously, if you are looking to go the CSM route, and that's also a good segue. I know a lot of people that transition into a CSM role, they work with them day in and day out. So you kind of already have a leg up on what are job responsibilities, kind of how we're supposed to work cross functionally. I say number two. Again, I can't speak on your company, any of the different things that you might be dealing with, but I would like to say at the end of the day, you are there for the benefit of the customer. Obviously, you're going to be working with salespeople, many different personalities that you might come across, especially with the CSM, because we are front and center with these customers, and we also have to work with many different people internally. So just kind of build those relationships with people that you might be working with, kind of understanding how I can help you in your role and how it relates to the overall success, because again, you're going to always deal with people that it might be a little challenging to work with, many different personalities, but just trying to find that common ground with the people that you might be working with and just kind of make them feel comfortable. Sometimes roles and responsibilities can kind of be overlapped, and sometimes it can get lost, but just make sure that you understand that at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter who you're working with, internally or externally. At the end of the day, you want to make sure that these customers are happy. So just try to work on that, building that rapport with team members, asking them how you can kind of help them make their job a little bit easier. And then in return, they're also going to help you, because again, it's all about relationship building, not just from a customer standpoint, but also with internal teams that you might be working with. Hopefully I answered your question, but just two things. Again, just if that's something that you want to do, you can connect with me offline and I can kind of give you some areas to kind of segue. Number two, also just work on areas to build that rapport with internal team members, because CSM roles, you're going to constantly be working with many different personalities. And sometimes the people that you might be working with, you might not gel, but if you can work on how you translate value and your, relationship building with folks, I think you're golden. So hopefully I answered your question.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
No problem at all, Tory.
No, absolutely. And thank you so much, Tory, for saying that. I'm going to actually move you down, Tory, so that people could see it better. But right here, you could connect with Mark. So go ahead and connect with Mark if you have not already. That way, if you have further questions as well that we have not addressed on the show, it doesn't have to end. The conversation doesn't have to end now. You can continue to have that conversation with Mark. So definitely I appreciate that as well. And Tory, I'm gonna bring you back on. I want to make sure that if you have anything else that you wanted to say, you could share it as well, Tory, before we head out of here.
I'm good. Thank you.
All right, no problem. Well, with that being said, I did have one more question here, unless somebody else does not have a question in the chat. But basically, it kind of ties in a little bit to what was just being said, which is actually I have two more questions. But this last one, the second to last one, will be this: ignoring customer feedback and not evolving with marketing needs. Like, do you have a story of a situation where you feel like, man, this customer need was ignored, or this team member's need was ignored, kind of like what Tory was mentioning earlier, and we did not meet that need, or we didn't evolve with the market, and we had a negative situation occur? Can you talk about that?
Yeah. So churn obviously is a big part of our game. Obviously, making sure that we set the right expectation with these customers. Probably one of the biggest things in the CSM that I like to tell people, because you are leading by influence. Obviously, you don't have direct reports under you, but you need to make sure that we are not only representing the company in the best light, but you're also being a advocate for the customer. And sometimes you need to have these tough conversations with people that are on your team that you might be working with. I can give you a quick scenario where I saw that this customer needed a lot more support, depending on the company that you might be working for. Some customers are paying more, and obviously the more support that you're paying in dollars, revenue dollars, you'll have more support in terms of resources that kind of help you out. And it was a customer that I had I was telling the sales folks, the service to sales, that this customer needs a lot of help. They're always submitting tickets, they're always submitting incidents, and they're not paying what they should be paying just because of obviously the budget. So I worked with the account executive. I said, hey, this customer has budget. Let's see if we can upsell them into a higher support package. So I worked with the C-suite. I pulled all their incidents, and at the end of the day, the learnings was that I was able to uncover a pain point, meaning I was able to understand that this customer was frustrated because of the lack of support, not due to us, but just because of they had so much going on from the customer side. Number two, I realized that you need to step in and make a good judgment, regardless of sometimes other opinions of people that might be on your team. And the third thing is that, yes, I was obviously sad to let this customer go, but the upside was that I also closed a $1.2 million deal just because I did right with the customer, and I also identified an area that was in need. So again, sometimes you do that. You CSMs are tasked and they wear a lot of hats, but sometimes you also need to have difficult conversations and do what's best for the customer, because you are internal advocate for that customer in that specific product or service area.
Love it, love it, love it. And with that being said, everyone, thank you so much for watching the show with us, Tech Niche Tips with Mark. He has been a great resource. And again, like I said, it does not have to end here. Please connect with Mark on LinkedIn. The link is dropped in the chat here below. And for those that are watching on YouTube or going to be watching this later on the podcast, whether it's Apple, Spotify, or others, I'll drop the link in there as well to connect with Mark. Now, before we go, I'm going to play one more video towards the end of this, and I want to let y'all know that this video was not just something that I created, but it was actually created by a friend of mine named Patrick, who has a whole production company called Triplex Media. So if you're looking to start a podcast, if you're looking to get any sort of media production needs that you have for an event or anything like you have like that going forward for you, go to triplexmedia.net. Again, that's www.triplexmedia.net, so that you can be able to go ahead and request services. He pretty much services the entire United States, but definitely primarily on the East Coast. So if you are interested in any of the services, definitely check out triplexmedia.net for more. And OTTO, appreciate you. He says, great show as always, bro. Thank you so much. And this is for you, family. I want to say thank you, everyone here who has decided to take the time to be a part of this show and to give your comments, your questions. It really helps the show go a long way, because we're here trying to provide valuable conversations to help you join us on the other side. And so with that being said, again, thank you so much, family, and have a great rest of your day. Take care. God bless.
What if your story can change the lives of others? My name is Joseph M. Smith, and I'm the host and founder of Tech Niche Tips, a channel that's dedicated to telling the stories of those that just broken into tech, as well as those that are more established in the game. For more information, subscribe to the channel. Feel free to like, leave a comment as well, and I hope to see you on the other side.